The unfathomable void of space, with its vast darkness punctuated by myriad distant stars, has always exerted a magnetic fascination over humanity. But that icy void was not just inhospitable due to the absence of vital air or the relentless shower of cosmic radiation, it also presented itself as an ethereal stage for the inexplicable, the unnameable that defied earthly logic and comprehension. Within the rusted, abandoned skeleton of the ancient Hermes space station, an ambitious monument to the human dream of reaching the stars that lay adrift in the silence of space for long years, something unsettling had been awakened from its cosmic slumber. It wasn't merely the metallic groans of an aging structure, stressed by the relentless gravitational dance and merciless micrometeoroids, nor the erratic, ghostly flickering of lights long thought extinguished. Dark rumors and cautious whispers circulated among the few brave, or foolish, souls who ventured near that space relic. Sinister reports spoke of inexplicable noises, like the dragging of invisible chains or the distant echo of spectral voices, of the ghostly glow of lights where there should be no power, and, most disturbing of all, of the fleeting appearance of a spectral figure dressed in a space suit. The infamous, ghost astronaut, who, according to urban space legends, tirelessly patrolled the station's silent corridors, like a spectral guardian of cosmic secrets, scaring away with his mere presence the few space tourists and thrill-seekers who dared to venture into his domain, now transformed into a macabre low-orbit tourist attraction. Was this ghostly apparition an ethereal remnant of some forgotten tragedy in the depths of spacetime, a lost soul wandering the cold corridors of its cosmic prison? Or could it be something far stranger and inexplicable, perhaps the first tangible proof that we were not alone in the vastness of the universe, that other forms of life, perhaps even spectral ones, could inhabit the darkness between the stars? The Intrepid Mystery Inc. Gang, known for their unwavering courage in the face of the inexplicable and their peculiar ability to unravel the most intricate plots, was about to embark on an investigation that would take them to the limits of human knowledge and perhaps beyond, where they would discover that, in the unforgiving isolation of space, some cosmic secrets prefer to remain in orbit, shrouded in a veil of mystery and shadows. The trusty and unmistakable mystery machine then groaned and rattled as Fred Jones, the blond and determined leader of the team, carefully maneuvered it along the dusty, increasingly isolated back roads that snaked towards the old, partially abandoned space launch complex, now relegated to a faltering attempt at a decaying tourist spot. Orange rust stained the once imposing metallic structures, and creeping vegetation struggled to reclaim the cracked concrete. "Fred, my dear friend, are you absolutely sure this is the right place?" asked Daphne Blake, the elegant and perpetually concerned team member, nervously adjusting her iconic green silk scarf around her neck. The air seemed heavy with an aura of mystery and a touch of melancholy. "To be honest, it looks more like a vast, rusty space junkyard than a promising tourist attraction." Velma Dinkley, the brilliant and sharp detective of the group, with her inseparable glasses and her face absorbed in the glowing screen of her tablet, grumbled in response, not tearing her gaze from the data she was analyzing with fervor. "The reports are unequivocally clear, Daphne. The Hermes space station is causing widespread and growing dread in the low-orbit space tourism community. Consistent accounts describe inexplicable noises echoing through empty corridors, the ghostly flickering of lights in deactivated sectors, and, most intriguing and disturbing of all, the alleged recurring appearance of a specter in a space suit, the infamous ghost astronaut. It's a classic case that calls for the intervention of the incomparable Mystery Inc. In the back seat of the Mystery Machine, Scooby-Doo, the lovable and perpetually hungry Great Dane, and his equally apprehensive best friend, Norville, Shaggy, Rogers, were huddled in a trembling embrace, every road noise amplifying their already considerable fear. However, a spark of interest, or perhaps just gluttony, ignited in their eyes when Velma casually mentioned that she had come across detailed information about the rehydrated space rations used by the Hermes astronauts. According to old manuals and space survival accounts, these rations were considered, in certain circles, a food of the gods, in terms of concentrated nutrition and long shelf life. Upon finally arriving at the rusted gates of the launch complex, they were greeted by a visibly exhausted and deeply dark-eyed tour guide, a middle-aged man named Peterson who seemed to have witnessed more paranormal phenomena than paying tourists in his time of service. "It's simply horrific," he exclaimed, his voice choked with emotion, his trembling hands gesturing in the air as if trying to ward off an invisible specter. Ever since these rumors started, no one wants to venture up there. The few brave, or perhaps just incautious, souls who dared to try exploring the station came rushing back in a state of shock, swearing they saw the terrifying ghost astronaut. He just floats through the dark corridors, turns off the lights as if he controls electricity itself. It's genuinely terrifying. Fred, ever the strategist, unfolded his carefully creased tactical map, a detailed diagram of the Hermes space station he had meticulously researched. With a serious expression and a glint of determination in his blue eyes, he began to outline a plan for infiltration and investigation. All right, team. Our main objective is simple. We need to get into the station, conduct a thorough investigation, and if the so-called ghost is a hoax as it usually is, devise a plan to expose the culprit and capture them. Velma frowned slightly, adjusting her glasses on the bridge of her nose. The Hermes systems are incredibly old and complex, Fred. Space technology has evolved dramatically since this station was decommissioned. Reactivating any of the main systems up there could prove to be a considerable engineering challenge, not to mention the potential risks of obsolete and unstable equipment. Scooby, his long snout sniffing the air around him, suddenly let out a low, curious bark towards an old, sealed supply box leaning against a wall. Through a crack in the packaging, metallic packages with mysterious labels adorned with space symbols were visible. Shaggy, despite the palpable fear that still enveloped him, couldn't help but crack a hungry smile. Space rations, Scooby. Are you seeing this? Do you think they're as bad as they say? Relicious. Scooby replied enthusiastically, his big brown eyes gleaming at the prospect of a possible snack. As the team prepared to board an ancient terrestrial transport module, a rusty relic that now served as a tourist attraction simulating a space journey, the solitary light atop the tallest structure of the launch complex flickered erratically, and almost in response, an ominous metallic sound, like the slow dragging of heavy chains over a metal surface, mysteriously echoed from above, cutting through the afternoon silence. Mr. Peterson visibly paled, his eyes wide, fixed on the top of the tower. He's watching us, he whispered hoarsely, terror etched on his face. The ghost. The interior of the transport module, despite being an almost perfect replica of a real spaceship from decades past, felt strangely claustrophobic and filled with a dusty smell of old metal and broken promises. The vehicle rattled and vibrated convincingly, simulating the tense and powerful ascent through Earth's atmosphere towards the vacuum of space and the rendezvous with the mysterious Hermes station. Velma was completely absorbed in the intricate control panels before her, her nimble fingers gliding over discolored buttons as she tried to decipher the tangled electrical diagrams and system schematics of the abandoned space station that she had managed to obtain from old space agency archives. The main systems of Hermes are all in a state of prolonged inactivity, or perhaps in a deep hibernation mode designed for energy conservation in an emergency, she murmured to herself, her mind working at 1,000 miles an hour. It's going to be like assembling an extremely complex three-dimensional puzzle to try and reactivate them one by one, not to mention the possibility of irreparable damage over the years. Fred, keeping his keen eye fixed on the module's main monitor, which displayed a static, grainy image of the Hermes station itself floating in the blackness of space, reaffirmed the mission's objective. Our primary focus remains the same: we need to infiltrate the station, conduct a meticulous investigation of every corner, and if the explanation for the phenomena is of human origin, as we suspect, devise a strategy to identify and capture the supposed ghost. Daphne, despite her growing anxiety, struggled to maintain her usual composure, although the dark and confined environment of the module, coupled with the increasing sense of isolation, did not contribute to her tranquility. But what if, by some remote chance, Fred, it's something genuine? A real ghost, a supernatural manifestation? Then, Daphne, Fred replied with unusual seriousness in his voice, his gaze meeting hers for a brief moment, we'll have a problem of an entirely different nature on our hands. Scooby and Shaggy, on the other hand, seemed to have found a temporary distraction from their paralyzing fear. They were both focused on a mysterious package of supervitamin nutritional food for astronauts, their faces creased in contemplation. Shaggy, hesitant, finally managed to open one of the sealed packets. "It smells kind of strangely synthetic, Scooby," he commented with a doubtful grimace. Scooby took a curious sniff of the contents, his tail wagging slightly in a faint display of optimism. "It vaguely resembles dehydrated pizza." Finally, after a simulated flight that seemed to last an eternity for the two most nervous members of the group, the transport module docked with a metallic thud to a rusty section of the Hermes space station. As they crossed the hatch and entered the station's interior, the atmosphere changed dramatically, becoming oppressive and charged with an eerie stillness. The silence was almost palpable, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the distant, amplified echo of their own hesitant footsteps amid the dark, labyrinthine corridors that stretched ahead, like the veins of a dead organism. Loose cables hung from the ceilings, gently swaying in the absence of functional artificial gravity, and once luminous control panels now displayed only rows of dead lights and dusty buttons. Velma, with her powerful flashlight cutting through the darkness, led the group towards the main control room, imagining it as the nerve center of the station, a complex tangle of wires, consoles, and forgotten monitors. "This is the heart of Hermes," she declared with conviction, pointing to the main console that stood like a technological altar amidst the chaos. "If we can somehow restore power and turn on this central system, we'll have access to crucial information about the entire station, including sensor logs, security cameras, and perhaps even event logs that might explain the sudden abandonment." As Velma knelt in front of the console, beginning to inspect the connections and indicators, a distant, dragging noise suddenly echoed through the corridor, causing Scooby and Shaggy to jump in unison, their fur bristling with pure terror. What on earth was that?" Shaggy whispered, his voice choked with fear, his wide eyes frantically scanning the darkness around them. At the end of a long corridor plunged in deep shadows, a slender, tall figure slowly began to materialize, its humanoid silhouette distorted and elongated by the lack of light and the strange perspective of the zero-gravity environment. It was unmistakable, despite the distance and gloom, the unmistakable form of an astronaut, complete with a bulky helmet and a worn white space suit. The infamous ghost astronaut was there, before them, like an apparition straight out of a space nightmare. The entire group huddled in a dark corner, watching with growing terror as the spectral figure seemed to float effortlessly down the corridor, a faint, ghostly glow mysteriously emanating from its dark visor. It then emitted a low, guttural moan, an eerie sound that seemed to carry the weight of the cosmic void, before disappearing as suddenly as it had appeared, vanishing into the depths of the darkness like a mirage in the space desert. The sudden and inexplicable encounter with the spectral figure of the ghost astronaut cast an even greater shadow of apprehension over the Mystery Incorporated team, elevating their alert level to alarming heights. He was real," exclaimed Daphne, her voice once steady now trembling and filled with disbelief. Fred, though visibly surprised by the apparition, struggled to maintain his usual composure and rationality. "Or else it was an incredibly well-crafted illusion, Daphne. We need to keep an open mind to all possibilities. Velma, what's the progress with reactivating the station's systems? If the ghost is, as often happens, a hoax orchestrated by someone, we'll need power and access to surveillance systems to expose the trick." Velma nodded with a determined shake of her head, her fingers already connected to an old, dusty auxiliary panel. "I'm working on accessing the secondary power systems. If we have a considerable stroke of luck, we might be able to reactivate the lights in at least some main sections of the station and, who knows, perhaps even partially restore the artificial gravity system in certain areas." While Velma focused all her attention and technical knowledge on the challenging task, Scooby and Shaggy, still visibly shaken by the ghostly encounter but driven by an insatiable curiosity, and perhaps the implicit promise of more space rations, inadvertently stumbled upon an old metal storage locker leaning against a side wall of one of the corridors. With a rusty creak, the locker door opened, revealing not only more packages of space rations with their enigmatic labels but also, to everyone's great surprise, an old logbook, bound in a material that had once been sturdy, now faded and brittle from time and the harsh conditions of space. "Look at this, Scooby!" Shaggy exclaimed with a mix of surprise and nervous excitement, pointing to the yellowed pages filled with cursive handwriting. "It looks like someone actually wrote here. A space logbook. Who could it have been?" The dusty logbook proved to belong to a scientist named Dr. Eris Thorne, apparently one of the original researchers who worked on the Hermes space station before its mysterious abandonment. The early entries detailed complex scientific experiments and routine astronomical observations, but as the pages progressed, the tone became increasingly dark and enigmatic. Dr. Thorne wrote about a mysterious discovery, something he described as being beyond human comprehension, and mentioned receiving strange, inexplicable signals from the depths of outer space. The last entries were particularly frantic and fragmented, alluding to growing anomalies in the station's sensor data and a disturbing feeling of being constantly watched by something invisible. Meanwhile, Velma finally made significant progress in her task. With a brief glow and a faint hum, the emergency lights in a section of the corridor flickered on, bathing the environment in a yellowish, sinister light. The sudden illumination revealed disturbing details that had previously been hidden in the darkness, deep scratch marks on the metallic walls, as if something with sharp claws had passed through, and a strong, peculiar metallic smell hung in the air, reminiscent of ozone or perhaps even dried blood. It was at that instant that a loud, sudden noise echoed from an isolated and seemingly deactivated section of the station, a sound unlike anything they had heard before. A pulsating, constant electronic hum, followed by a sharp crack that made everyone flinch. Without hesitation, the group rushed towards the sound, their hearts pounding in their chests. When they finally reached the area, they found the ghost astronaut standing motionless over a large metal box, which seemed to vibrate slightly with an invisible energy. To the team's surprise and growing terror, the ghost appeared to be, somehow, charging or activating the box. Suddenly, the space specter turned its head in their direction, the faint glow emanating from its helmet seeming to intensify. It then emitted a guttural, inhuman cry that echoed through the cold corridors, before floating rapidly towards an isolated containment room with a reinforced metal door. With a loud, definitive bang, the door slammed shut behind it, sealing the mysterious ghost astronaut and the intriguing box inside the dark chamber. The intriguing revelation that the ghost astronaut not only existed but also seemed to be involved in some sort of recharging process of a metallic object, deeply shook even the pragmatic Fred's certainties. This simply doesn't make sense within a logical framework, he muttered, frowning in deep contemplation. A ghost, by definition, is an ethereal entity, with no physical needs. Why would it need to recharge anything? Velma, however, with her analytical mind working at full speed, was already formulating a new theory. If what we saw isn't a ghost in the traditional sense, then we're likely dealing with someone incredibly ingenious who is using advanced technology to create a convincing simulation of a specter. The box he was manipulating must be the source of this illusion, perhaps an energy generator or a holographic projection device. She approached the containment room door, meticulously examining the sealed control panel next to it. "I need more power to try and unlock this door. It seems the locking system is independent of the station's main power." While Velma hunched over the panel, trying to find a way to overload the security system, Fred quickly unpacked the materials he had brought, hastily setting up an improvised trap with sturdy fishing nets and nylon ropes, hoping that the supposed ghost, for whatever reason, would be compelled to return to the area where they could attempt to capture it. Daphne, meanwhile, sat in a more illuminated corner of the corridor, the dusty Dr. Thorne's diary open in her hands. She carefully reread the last entries, hoping to find any additional clue, any cryptic mention or forgotten detail that might shed light on the ghost's true nature and motives. He repeatedly mentioned something about residual energy floating through the station and also about detecting strange cosmic pulses coming from an unknown direction, she shared with the group. At that moment, while fear still lingered in the air, but curiosity slowly began to overcome it. Scooby and Shaggy, in their hesitant exploration of the surroundings, inadvertently stumbled upon a cleverly disguised secret compartment in one of the main control room's walls. With a soft click, the compartment opened, revealing not only a new and surprising variety of space ration packages, including exotic flavors like Strawberry Nebula and Chocolate Black Hole, but also, to everyone's great surprise, a small, unusually shaped metallic device that looked like a portable tracker or sensor, with a small, flickering screen. Velma picked up the device with interest, her eyes gleaming with new understanding. "This," she exclaimed, examining the device from all angles. "This is an electromagnetic pulse locator. And it's showing a surprisingly strong intensity reading coming directly from the containment room where the ghost locked itself in." The team exchanged glances, the tension in the air palpable. A new strategy began to form. Velma, with Fred's help, managed to redirect a limited amount of power from the emergency systems to the containment room door's control panel. With a louder hum and a metallic click, the door slowly began to open, revealing the interior of a dusty, visibly deactivated laboratory. Inside, the mysterious metal box was connected to an intricate recharging system with cables and flickering lights, and the figure of the ghost astronaut was there, his back to them, appearing to be manipulating something in the box. The faint light emanating from the ghost's helmet now pulsed with greater intensity. Suddenly, a guttural, animalistic sound filled the air, and the ghost turned abruptly. This time, to everyone's shock, it didn't float. It ran towards them with surprising agility for someone wearing a bulky space suit, brandishing an elongated metallic object that resembled a space maintenance tool, and which now seemed to emit a faint bluish glow. The sudden and unexpected confrontation made it clear that the ghost astronaut was not an ethereal apparition, but rather a corporeal being, and a surprisingly agile and hostile one at that. Fred, reacting quickly to the threat, threw the fishing net towards the masked figure, but the ghost deflected the attack with a swift move of the metallic tool, which produced a sharp, buzzing electrical sound when it struck the net. Velma, demonstrating surprising agility for someone so intellectually focused, managed to push a metal shelf laden with deactivated equipment, creating an improvised barrier that blocked the attacker's path for precious seconds. "He's incredibly fast," Daphne exclaimed, watching the agility of the being in the space suit with horror. Scooby and Shaggy, in a rare moment of coordinated panic, awkwardly stumbled over a rusty service cart, which went spinning and collided violently with the opposite wall, knocking over an unstable stack of storage containers. One of the containers burst open, spilling its contents onto the floor, several space maintenance suits identical to the one the ghost was wearing, but these looked brand new, with no signs of wear, and clearly displayed the Hermes space station logo. At that exact moment, as if a crucial piece of a complex puzzle finally clicked into place, a wave of clarity flooded Velma's keen mind. "The diary," she exclaimed, her voice charged with excitement. Dr. Thorne repeatedly mentioned anomalies in the sensor data and the presence of strange, residual energy floating through the station. "And the pulse device we found." Suddenly, she understood the connection between all the pieces of the puzzle. She realized that the small metallic device was not just an energy pulse locator, but rather an emitter of controlled electromagnetic pulses, and the mysterious box that Ghost was constantly recharging was not the source of its energy, but rather the source of its elaborate illusion of being a ghost. The ghost astronaut was not a supernatural entity, but rather a human in disguise, a station employee who, for some unknown reason, was using a modified space suit and the pulse-emitting device to create the illusion of floating in the absence of gravity and to generate the noises and light effects that haunted the station. The metallic smell, the scratches on the walls, everything could be the result of this imposter's nightly activities. Fred, with this new and crucial information in hand, quickly adjusted his capture plan. He realized that the pulse device itself could be used to disorient the imposter. "Scooby, Shaggy. Quick. Open every space ration packet you can find. That peculiar, strong smell is enough to disorient a small army." Scooby and Shaggy, initially shocked at the idea of wasting food, even if it was space rations, but even more terrified by the prospect of facing the ghost again, obeyed without question. They began frantically tearing open the packages, spreading the synthetic and slightly rancid odor of the rations throughout the laboratory. The ghost, upon smelling the unusual scent, staggered back, visibly confused and coughing. Taking advantage of the imposter's moment of disorientation, Fred activated the energy pulse device, pointing it in the direction of the figure in the spacesuit. The ghost let out a cry of frustrated rage and fell to the floor, struggling. When they removed the helmet, it revealed the sweaty, irritated face of Mr. Thorne, the same tour guide who had greeted them, an old maintenance technician from the station who was evidently behind the whole hoax, trying to scare away tourists and keep the station isolated for himself, hoping to discover the secrets that Dr. Thorne had left behind. "I just wanted to protect it," he grumbled, as Fred and Daphne helped him up and immobilized him with the very net he had avoided. "Protect the station from what exactly, Mr. Thorne?" Daphne asked, her curiosity finally overcoming her fear. "From the signals, from the inexplicable cosmic pulses that Dr. Thorne was researching. They're coming from out there. I just needed more time to try and understand." With the ghost astronaut's mask finally removed and the imposter revealed as Mr. Thorne himself, the Mystery Incorporated gang had once again unraveled a seemingly supernatural mystery, bringing the truth into the light of reason. Mr. Thorne, now in custody, confessed that he had found Dr. Thorne's diary during his nightly explorations of the abandoned station and had become progressively obsessed with the scientist's research into the mysterious, cosmic signals. Believing these signals were extraterrestrial in origin and potentially dangerous to humanity, he created the elaborate persona of the space ghost to scare away curious individuals and keep the station isolated, hoping to gain enough time to decipher Dr. Thorne's notes and understand the nature of the signals. "I truly believe that Dr. Thorne had stumbled upon something that should not be revealed to the world," he explained with a defeated and downcast tone of voice. "Something genuinely extraterrestrial." Velma, however, had already conducted a thorough analysis of the last fragmented notes in Dr. Thorne's diary and the peculiar electromagnetic pulse device found in the secret compartment. "Mr. Thorne," she began with her usual intellectual clarity, "the cosmic signals that Dr. Thorne was detecting and recording were, in fact, not originating from any distant alien civilization, but rather the result of an intermittent and sporadic power failure in the old and unstable communication systems of the space station itself. The mysterious residual energy he mentioned was merely the electromagnetic reverberation of those irregular pulses. Dr. Thorne's groundbreaking discovery was, in reality, a complex engineering flaw he had been attempting to diagnose and repair before the Hermes station was abruptly decommissioned and abandoned by the space agency." Fred, visibly satisfied with the impeccable logic of Velma's explanation and the successful resolution of the mystery, silently watched as Mr. Thorne was gently escorted away by the local authorities, who had been called to the scene. So, in the end, no interdimensional ghosts, no close encounters with beings from other planets, just an overly zealous maintenance technician and a tragic scientific misunderstanding with somewhat spooky consequences. Daphne sighed deeply, a mix of relief and a touch of disappointment in her voice. "At least this time we didn't have to deal with any real monsters with sharp fangs and menacing claws." Scooby and Shaggy, now feeling considerably more at ease in an environment that had suddenly become less frightening, continued to sample the various space ration varieties they had found. "Shaggy," Scooby said with a mouthful, balancing a packet of cosmic meatloaf on the tip of his big paw, "this astronaut food isn't so bad after all, is it?" "That's true, Scooby," Shaggy agreed with a thoughtful nod, wiping crumbs from his shirt. "Some of these things even taste interesting. But, honestly, nothing beats a good fresh pepperoni pizza." The Mystery Incorporated team left the now demystified Hermes space station behind, its haunting reputation debunked and, once again, deemed safe for the curiosity of the few remaining space tourists. Velma, before boarding the trusty mystery machine again, paused for a moment and gazed up at the vast, star-filled sky above. "There's still an immense amount to discover out there, in the infinite expanse of space," she murmured to herself, a thoughtful expression on her face. But perhaps, just perhaps, some mysteries are best solved right here, beneath our own feet, on planet Earth. The imposing and silent Hermes space station, once a stage of cosmic mystery and spectral haunting, finally returned to its original state of inert tranquility, drifting solitary in the cold embrace of the vacuum. The truth, as so often happens, proved to be far more prosaic and grounded in logic than in the tales of ghosts and extraterrestrial encounters that had proliferated around it. The keen insight of the Mystery Inc. team, armed with reason and a healthy dose of skepticism, dispelled the elaborate illusion of the ghost astronaut, revealing not a wandering spirit or a visitor from another world, but rather an overly zealous maintenance technician, driven by a scientific misunderstanding and a mistaken belief in a hidden cosmic truth. The intrepid team, in yet another successful adventure in their long history of unraveling the inexplicable, left behind not only a solved enigma and an unmasked impostor, but also a reaffirmation of the importance of human curiosity as the driving force of discovery, and the certainty that, however much the pursuit of the unknown may lead us to confront our deepest fears, it is the application of reason and meticulous investigation that invariably guides us towards knowledge and understanding, whether in the unfathomable depths of outer space or in the most obscure and mysterious corners of our own earthly imagination. And so, as the Hermes station continued its silent orbit beneath the vast and shimmering stellar dome, cosmic silence filled its empty corridors, perhaps awaiting the next mystery that the infinite universe might, one day, send its way.